Welcome to the complete story of Final Fantasy XIV, Endwalker, the epic conclusion to the Zodiark Hydaelyn saga that will take us all the way to the moon and back. Endwalker is a tale of holding on to hope, even in the bleakest of times, and how we can find the will to go on, even in the face of insurmountable sorrow and inevitable death. Not to mention some new bunny people. This time they are small and have funny names. But anyway, I'm Peter from Birds of Play. In this video I hope you'll join me as we take a walk all the way to the end, holding our head high, even in the face of despair. It's going to be a walk to remember, and I hope you'll stay with us every step of the way as we revisit the grand conclusion to this saga that has become beloved by so many. Traveling to Lim-Zalominsa, the Warrior of Light and the Scions of the Seventh Dawn prepare for their journey across the sea, as Kryl has secured them passage and entry into Hydaelyn, a solitary island nation of the north, where they hope to find answers that might help them avert the encroaching calamity. During the voyage, the Warrior of Light awakens to a mysterious voice, which compels him to visit the ship's deck, where he encounters the luminescent woman he once saw at Lake Silvertear, the woman rejoicing that her voice still reaches him. The mysterious woman reveals herself to be none other than Hydaelyn, and confirms Emet-Selch's revelation that her true nature is indeed that of a primal, just like the ones they have dedicated themselves to fighting. As the primal Zodiark was created to forestall the apocalypse which threatened the ancient world, she too was brought forth in a similar fashion to bind him. But now, as the Ascians have partially succeeded in rejoining the shards of the sundered world to make their god whole again, Hydaelyn has grown weak in equal measure. As such, the power to draw the Warrior of Light's mind into the rift is no longer hers to command. Regardless, she now presents her weakened image to the warrior to relay a message of utmost importance, as she tells him that the impending conflict will decide the fate of this world and all life upon it. Finally, she tells him that when his journey has prepared him to surmount the insurmountable, she will honor a promise made in another age. As the ship nears Hydaelyn, Hydaelyn fades away, and the warrior returns to his companions, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Together they behold Old Hydaelyn, the capital of Hydaelyn, a great center of knowledge and learning, where they might find the answers they seek as they walk united to face the end. Upon arrival, they are faced with the harbor's immigration officer, who proceeds to process Grahatia, Y'shtola, Thancred, and Urianger first, seeing as they all bear the mark of Archons, signifying that they have excelled in a particular field of study in the eyes of Hydaelyn. The twins also have an easy time gaining re-entry into their homeland, although rumors of the disownment by their father, Master Foshino, have become widespread in the city proper. As such, the immigration officer cautions them not to make matters worse by continuing to rebel against their father's and the Forum's wishes. Meanwhile, the Warrior of Light is processed as an adventurer, while Estinian has some difficulties providing his current profession, seeing as he is no longer the Azure Dragoon of Ishgard. Coming to his rescue, Kryl interjects and introduces him as a mercenary for the students of Baldesion, thus sponsoring his entry into the country. With such formalities finally behind them, Graha and Kryl give the warrior a tour of Old Hydaelyn, before regrouping at the Baldesion Annex, the headquarters of the students of Baldesion. There they discuss their next move, regarding how they can prevent the Telephoroi's evil scheme from coming to fruition by foiling the machinations of this particular faction of the now splintered Gallian Empire, headed by Crown Prince Xenos and Fandaniel, the Sundered Ascian. Their discussion revolves around Hydaelyn's enigmatic stance on the end of days, which has resulted in the Forum being unwilling to cooperate with, and the ominous Telephoroi towers that have been popping up all around the world without warning. Kryl mentions a lead in Thavnir, an island just south of the coast of Ilsabad, home to the city-state of Radzadhan, which might help them gain some insight into the sudden appearance of the towers. This prompts the Scions to divide their efforts, Thancred, Urianger, and Estinian are to venture to Thamnia, while the others probe the forum's secrets in Sharlayan. As their champion, the warrior is tasked with overseeing progress on both fronts, Krile deferring the decision regarding which front to tackle first to the warrior's own discretion. Choosing not to venture far, the warrior of light opts to begin looking for answers in old Sharlayan. Initially, the investigation proves unfruitful, so he takes the time to sit down for a little heart-to-heart with Eorzea, who shares with him her feelings about her and Alphinaud having been disowned by their father. Their father's philosophy and that of their grandfather Louisoix had always differed greatly regarding Sharlayan's commitment to non-interference. However, now that she has found herself on the receiving end of her father's unflinching conviction, she admits to having felt angry. Eorzea tells the warrior that it wasn't until afterwards she realized how childish she had been, how being self-righteous and stubborn must run in the family. For if she could only have mustered a civil response, things might have turned out differently. As they contemplate what could have been, they spy gleaners, people who take on various jobs for the Forum, ferrying goods to Labyrinthos, a vast complex situated beneath the island. The complex is used to house Sharlayan's living library and is composed of all manner of flora and fauna for study. However, the amount of goods being ferried by the Gleamers seems excessive, prompting Eorzea to suspect that Labyrinthos may hold a clue to what the Forum is planning. Together they descend down into Labyrinthos, deep beneath the city, where a false sun lights up a fabricated sky. Once there, the warrior makes the acquaintance of a Viera Gleamer by the name of Erenwyl, helps him capture a specimen he has been tasked with procuring. As a way of showing his gratitude for the help, Erenwyl divulges that he has been asked to bring the specimen even further down into the depths of Labyrinthos, to the restricted section, which is open to only a few select researchers, handpicked by the Forum. The research being conducted there is so secretive that even those who have risen to the rank of Archons know not of it. Erenwyl himself is not privy to what the Forum needs the specimen for, but he suspects that they are gathering materials for some sort of migration, perhaps to Marasidia in the south. The reason he suspects this is that the flora and fauna the Gleamers have been asked to gather are mostly known to serve as reliable sources of sustenance, or for otherwise making soil and water viable for consumption. Delving deeper into Labyrinthos, they happen upon peculiar white flowers known as heart blooms. What makes these flowers unique is that they are seemingly attuned to ambient emotions, leading them to take on the color of the intense feelings found in their surroundings, the working of this empathetic effect being a mystery to even the scholars of Sharlayan. The party is fascinated by the existence of such flowers, but must nevertheless continue their efforts to uncover the Forum's secrets. In order to do so, they trail Erenwyl disguised as frogs, in order to eavesdrop on his conversation with a member of the Forum as he finishes making his delivery. Successful in their task, they witness Erenwyl issue his complaints about how the Gleamers are being kept in the dark despite being made to do so much work. The Forum member then shares with Erenwyl that in ages past, Sharlayan was tasked with a tremendous duty to counter the final days, and that the time has now come to fulfill that charge. The Forum member says he can't share any more information at present, but promises that all will be revealed in due course. In the meantime, he asks Erenwyl to simply believe that the Gleaners toil in the service of the greatest good. Erenwyl accepts this answer for the time being, but warns the Forum members that the Gleaners will not go on working like this forever. Afterwards, Erenwyl gives the frogs a look, having easily seen through their disguise. He then tells the party that he hopes the conversation was informative, before taking his leave. Returning to Krile's side, she offers the warrior a heartbloom flower, imbued with a spell to keep it from wilting, telling him that Hydaelyn had told her that he will need it for the journey ahead. She then becomes a vessel for Hydaelyn, who tells him, walk free and to believe what he will of his own volition. The bloom will serve as his guide, testing and proving his conviction as he bears the light for others to follow. Before they can investigate the mysteries of Labyrinthos further, Master Fortuno appears in the capacity of an active member of the Forum, to intervene, since he believes their meddling may impact the important work being done. He tells them that the Forum will convene to determine their future in the city, and that G'raha Tia has already been detained for reading books from the restricted section of the library. The Forum apprehends the Scions, and as the Forum convenes, Fortuno accuses the Scions of having entered their country under false pretenses, their true objective being to disrupt their work. The Scions make their case, and Y'shtola reveals that they know that the Forum now struggles to complete some great work, even though the Scions still haven't uncovered exactly what that work entails. This seems to verify G'raha's findings, who explains how the policies of Sharlayan have shifted dramatically from accumulating knowledge for the betterment of society to structuring society for the betterment of the accumulation of knowledge, especially in regard to Labyrinthos, as obscene funds have been afforded to the expansion of those facilities. According to G'raha, this change in course dates back to some 270 years, when Sharlayan scholars began their study into the ethereal sea. Upon hearing this, Fortuno admits that they are bound to duty they cannot ignore, and say that they will fulfill their mission, not through battle and bloodshed, but rather survival. Unconvinced, Y'shtola declares that the Scions will fight until the heavens fall, until their last breath. Alphino similarly declaring his commitment to press on, to tread a different path from his father. Suddenly, the discussion is brought to a close, as Scholar Monteshane, the head of the studium, defends the Scions, leading the Forum to simply restrict their activities, as opposed to outright banishing them after a vote which wins them a slender majority. After receiving such a harsh welcome from their countrymen, Alphino and Alisaie return to House Levelier in the company of their mother, Ameliance, who instructs the servants to keep their visit a secret from Lord Fortuno. She then instructs the servants to take her children aside and present them with gifts she had prepared for them. Once alone with the Warrior of Light, Ameliance thanks him for taking such good care of her children and inspiring them to greatness. As the twins return, they are adorned with a new set of clothes, individually tailored to their needs. Furthermore, Alphino was presented with a set of sage armaments that once belonged to his father, his mother hoping they will serve him well, as he simultaneously leads to heal and cause harm on the field of battle. She then hands Alphino a sage's soul crystal, hoping that the wisdom embedded in the crystal will serve him well, believing he will master his new role in no time. Lastly, Ameliance expresses her hope that one day they will find common ground with their father. For even though it's hard to tell, she believes that their father ever toils with his children's best interests at heart. Having exhausted their investigation in Old Sharlayan for the time being, the Warrior of Light meets up with Thancred, Oriange, and Estinian to look for answers elsewhere, at last following Cryel's lead. Through an experimental aetheryte, the party then travels to Thamnir, but once there, they are racked by an agonizing wave of ethereal sickness, which can be attributed to the aetheryte's experimental nature. That is, aside from Estinian, who had already attuned to the aetheryte in Thavnir proper. As they regain their footing and learn of the island's economic plight, their journey leads them to the Great Work, a secluded village of alchemists, teetering on the edge of collapse. There they are introduced to Varshan, a young aura who serves the enigmatic satrap, the provincial governor who rules from the city of Ratzat-Han. Estinian eyes Varshan with thinly veiled suspicion, but chooses to bide his time. Despite the tension, Varshan presents the villagers with some scales, shimmering with untapped power. These scales are the last hope of the alchemists who are desperate to forge warding talismans against the mind-twisting horrors of the towers. Estinian's unease deepens as he recognizes the scales as dragon scales. Seeing as he has a long history with dragons and is still keenly aware of the legacy of the Dragon Song War, he demands the truth behind the origin of the scales. Upon being questioned, Varshan reveals that the satrap has brokered a covenant with a dragon, who is willing to aid their cause, and before Estinian can press the matter further, he is led away by alchemists interested in researching his dragon-like powers. Using the scales, the alchemists hope to nullify the etheric emissions emanating from the accursed towers. One such tower already looming over the landscape in Themnia. The Scions assist in testing the talismans, and once their work is complete, Nithana, a dedicated alchemist, presents the Scions with a warding scale, meant to shield the soul completely from corruptive ether. This is quite a discovery, as it might allow any of them to approach the towers without fear of being taken over by their influence, even without possessing the echo. To test the efficacy of the item, the Warrior of Light and Nithana enter the Tower of Salt, a sinister spire looming over the island. Thankfully, the experiment is a resounding success, as Nithana is uninfluenced by the tower. However, as they celebrate the ward's effectiveness, Fandaniel appears, his dark magic ensnaring Nithana and pulling her into the tower's depths. Giving chase after her, the Warrior of Light confronts Fandaniel inside the tower. There, the sundered Ascian reveals his past to the warrior, the experience further enlightened by the power of the echo. Fandaniel tells him that, theoretically speaking, he inherited the position and the soul of the Fandaniel who sat on the Convocation of 14 in the time of the final days. Practically speaking, however, that fact is of no consequence to him, as he was born and lived as himself. Eventually, he was recruited into the Ascians and imbued with the former Fandaniel's knowledge and memories, but he never truly felt like they were a part of who he was. Knowing that the warrior has poked his nose into an Allagan ruin or two, he then divulges that he was once the one and only Amon, the Allagan scientist who twisted life into grotesque experiments to entertain a decadent empire, though he always longed for more. During that time, he had pledged his allegiance to Emperor Zande, a tyrant who dragged his people into conquest to further an empire intended to stand the test of time. However, Emmet Selk offered Amon the mantle of Fandaniel, telling him to take his place amongst his peers, rather than to die a pointless death amidst the ashes of a doomed nation. Amon, driven by despair and ambition, accepted Emmet Selk's offer, leaving his clone to serve Zande in his stead, while he ascended as an Ascian, noting how even the once great Allagan Empire was destined for nothingness, proving that nothing truly endures. Having listened to Fandaniel's tale, the Warrior of Light makes a strategic retreat from the tower, carrying grim news back to their allies. Summoned to Radzat Han, the group meets the elusive satrap. However, as the satrap bids them welcome, Estinian's patience runs out, as he accuses the satrap of deception, demanding that he show himself. His instincts prove true, and as the curtain behind the throne is drawn, there stands Vertra, a mighty worm, son of Midgardsormur, and sibling to Tiamat and Bahamut. For centuries, Vertra has ruled from the shadows, driven by an unyielding love for his people. What is more, Varshan, the boy whom they thought they were already familiar with, is in fact the dragon himself, the boy's body having been fashioned as a simulacrum, capable of nesting the great worm's eye, allowing him to travel his realm without revealing his true nature. The dragon's plea is as heartbreaking as it is desperate. The tower must fall, and his imprisoned people must be freed. The Scions promise their aid, but recognize the enormity of the task ahead. For now, they must regroup and forge a plan to challenge the forces of the Telepharoi, knowing that every moment counts in a battle against despair itself. Back at the Annex, the Scions regroup, their path forward now clear, yet still fraught with peril. With Vertra's request weighing on their hearts, and the promise of the warding talisman within their reach, their decision is made. The Tower of Salt must fall. They devise a bold plan, dividing into two teams. One team will break through the tower's defenses and face the Mega Sisters, the twisted guardians bound to its will. The other will safeguard the imprisoned people of Themnia, sustaining their fragile lives until the core of the tower is destroyed. The assault is executed with precision and grit, and as the Mega Sisters fall and the tower's defenses crumble, the Scions converge at its heart. There, an ominous revelation awaits. massive pulsing machine, draining ether far beyond what is needed to sustain the tower. Y'shtola, driven by both curiosity and dread, uncovers its horrific secret. A human limb serves as the core's heart, grotesquely fused with machinery. Estinian, unmoved by her horror, demands swift action, and with a decisive blow, the core is destroyed, forcing the tower to come crashing down. As the structure disintegrates, G'raha weaves levitation magic to suspend the scions and the liberated prisoners in the air, guiding them safely to the ground below. The scions then return to Razadhan, where the great worm Vertra awaits their return. He offers his gratitude and his aid, promising to provide them with a bounty of warding scales sufficient to arm an entire company of soldiers. Before allowing him to take his leave, Vertra then addresses the Warrior of Light and urges him to protect those he holds dear, for they will be his strength and salvation. In the bustling capital, Nitana, now recovered, greets the scions with unrestrained joy. Her passion stirs something profound in the Warrior of Light, causing the heart bloom he received in Labyrinthos to bloom a brilliant orange. Intrigued, Nitana wonders aloud if this is Akasa, the intangible force theorized in Hanish alchemy, born of emotions and separate from ether. Returning to the Baldesian Annex, the scions assess their newfound strength. With the warding talisman secured, they are ready to summon their allies and strike at the heart of Garlemald, without fear of its oppressive dominion. Plans are set in motion to rally their friends and comrades, but for now, they allow themselves a rare respite, sharing food and laughter. They find fleeting comfort in each other's company, eating hamburgers the size of their heads. In the corner of the room, the heart bloom glows a gentle green, no doubt moved by their feelings of friendship. Elsewhere, far removed from the warmth of the camaraderie shared with the scions, in the icy expanse of Garlemald, Xenos and Fandaniel stand amidst the desolation they have wrought. With twisted glee, they revel in the few fleeting joys left in the world they intend to reduce to ash. Xenos looking forward to being reunited with the Warrior of Light, the only one who can set his soul aflame. As dawn breaks, the Warrior of Light joins Kryl, Alize, and Alphino on a quest for more answers, and together they visit Scholark Monteshane, who had previously helped them during their run-in with the Forum. Upon meeting him, Monteshane tells them that he has always believed that curiosity should be nurtured, not stifled. He tells the twins that Master Louisoix would have been proud of how they conducted themselves in front of the Forum. Alphino asks Monteshane whether he can tell them anything about this duty they believe they must fulfill, but Monteshane regrets to inform him that he can tell him nothing, as he is sworn to secrecy. Furthermore, said secrecy is enforced by an enchantment, which makes it impossible for him to break his oath without the express permission of the Forum. To explain how this is possible, Monteshane gives them a lecture on etherology, explaining the division between the soul, memory, and the corporeal form. He asks them to think of the soul as paper, and memory the words written upon it. Then he asks them to imagine what would happen if that same paper would be doused with even more ink, resulting in everything that had been written being blotted out. This is the secret behind why he can't break his oath. But at the same time, this phenomenon was also witnessed following the 7th Umbral Calamity, where the people of Eorzea lost their memories regarding the aftermath of Bahamut's rampage. In order to undo this enchantment, 9/10 of the Forum must agree. Only then will they be able to share the secret behind their sacred duty. Making for Al Amigo, the scions are met with warriors from every guild and faction across Eorzea, standing side by side. A diverse and talented group of individuals assembled for a single purpose: to fight, not only for the sake of Eorzea, but for the entire world, including the people of Garlemald. They are even joined by Lord Emmanuel de Fortemps of Ishgard, despite having earned his reputation as somewhat of a coward. Furthermore, they are joined by factions from Dalmasca, Oja, and Al Amigo, all lands which have suffered the tyranny of the Empire, but are now willing to fight to protect its people, the common folk of the very same empire that once benefited from their suffering. As a representative of Al Amigo, Lys reiterates their commitment to the cause, noting that the citizens of Garlemald are people just like them, not monsters. To aid their cause, the Garland Ironworks have provided them with airships to carry this mighty force across the treacherous mountains encircling Garlemald, delivering them to the icy plains near the capital's perimeter, just out the Telephoroi's reach. What awaits them, however, is grim. A coalition of tempered Imperial legions, former enemies, now united under the Telephoroi's banner. The campaign begins with precision. Thancred leads a covert team to disable Magitech reinforcements, while the main force divides, one group escorting supplies, the other breaching the defenses. The Warrior of Light weaves between these efforts, lending strength where the battle burns hottest. Success comes at a cost, but the Alliance secures a foothold, establishing a camp in the ghostly ruins of a town they christen Camp Broken Glass, named for the sound of cracking ice beneath their feet. With the camp secure, the Scions scatter to their tasks. Thancred leads scouts into the city, machinists toil over damaged Magitech, and Ishtola tends to the tempered with healers from Gridania. The warrior joins Eorzea, Alphinaud, and the disgraced Hydaelyn in a search for survivors in the eastern wastes. It is there they spot a lone figure in green, darting through the snow. Following her leads them to a crumbling manor, where a small group of survivors clings to life, their stories painted with despair. The survivors recount the night Garlemald fell, a monstrous roar that tore through the city, turning allies into mindless thralls. Some cling to hope, believing the Emperor's voice, heard through crackling radios, signals his return. They plead for help, contacting the Tappers, outcasts who survive by harvesting ceruleum from frozen lakes. The Scions learn of the Tappers' tenuous existence, reliant on their craft to trade for survival in a land that once scorned them. But trust is fragile. When the Scions return to the manor, tensions explode. The woman in green reveals her sick sister, sparking panic. Accusations fly, and the sisters flee into the frozen wilderness, choosing the merciless cold over risking betrayal by outsiders. Wounded, but understanding, Eorzea and Alphinaud resolve to return to camp and report what they've learned of the locals' fear and mistrust. Back at Broken Glass, Lucia and Maxima uncover grim truths about Garlemald's collapse. A civil war stoked by lies and fear, funded by Fandaniel and House Brutus. An earthquake and a terrible roar enslaved the city, leaving only those near radios, coincidentally emitting a protective field, untouched by the tempering. The weight of their discoveries is interrupted by the arrival of Serena, who reports the capture of a Garlean soldier stealing supplies. The prisoner, a youth named Iullus, lashes out, calling Lucia and Maxima traitors for aiding outsiders. Despite his venom, the Scions extend mercy, offering aid for his people. Iullus reluctantly agrees to lead them to his commander, but his disdain is palpable, dismissing Alphinaud and Eorzea as children unfit for the task. Lucia's unwavering confidence in the trio sets them on their path. The journey through the icy ruins ends at a hidden stronghold, where Lord Quintus von Cinna awaits. The Legatus, weary yet unbroken, meets their plea for peace with scorn. To him, their unity is hypocrisy, a facade to enslave Garlemald. His piercing question silences the twins. Why reject the Empire's unity only to pursue their own? Declaring the Scions prisoners, Quintus spares the warrior from a shock collar, but warns any defiance will be met with pain for their allies. Now trapped in enemy territory, the Scions must navigate a delicate balance, finding threads of hope amidst a fraying tapestry of pride, despair, and unspoken truths. Yet the Scions see the truth. Supplies are dwindling, and the remaining ceruleum reserves are barely enough to keep the cold at bay. Alphinaud suggests seeking aid, but Iullus resists, as rumors speak of reinforcements, of a lifeline arriving from beyond the ruins. However, Alphinaud argues that survival cannot hinge on whispers. Reluctantly, Iullus takes the matter to Quintus, but the Legatus refuses all aid. As such, scavenging is their only recourse for survival. Huddled together in their cell, the twins reflect on the long road that led them here. Alfred knows political failures, the shattered dream of the Crystal Braves, LSA's endless search for purpose, the lessons learned amidst the wreckage of Dalamud. They have lost before. They will rise again. The warrior and Euless travel into the ruined city to see what they can find, but their foray yields little. But even a handful of ceruleum is a victory. As they search, Euless watches the Scions with wary curiosity. He has spent his life seeing Eorzeans as usurpers, but their actions defy his expectations. They do not hoard, they do not mock, they give. Beyond the ruins, Euless and the warrior tread through the snow. Euless pauses at the remnants of a home, its shattered walls whispering of a past stolen too soon. It was once his mother, his siblings, waiting for him to return. But the day he was meant to bring them to safety, he arrived too late. The Telophoroi had claimed them, turned them. He did what duty demanded. He ended their suffering with his own hands. Euless asks whether they might have been saved had they turned to the gods of the Eorzeans, but he doesn't entertain the blasphemous thought too long. At Camp Broken Glass, Euless delivers Quintus's demands for returning the twins. Lucia listens, then calmly states the truth, telling the young makeshift emissaries that Thancred and his scouts have already freed the twins. The collars are gone. Euless falters, horror creeping into his eyes, and then chaos. Quintus's true orders unfurl like a noose. The Legion strikes. Garlean soldiers and Magitech war machines surge forward. But the wind howls in defiance, a mighty gust splitting the battlefield, as Arwusana, the Pajal of Gridania, turns the tide with a single invocation. Lucia steps forward, voice steady, telling Euless that Garlemald's 10th Legion has reached out to the Grand Company of Eorzea. The Empire is broken, its scattered remnants desperate for purpose. They have asked for aid, and with that, she delivers a message meant for Quintus, asking his legion to stand down so that they might help the people of Garlemald. Over the radio, the legatus listens. Recognition flickers in his weary eyes. With a simple nod, he orders his forces to halt. The battle is over. His dream is dead. He dismisses his men, releases them from duty, and takes one last moment to mourn the vision of a Garlemald that will never be. A gunshot rings through the air, and the legatus is no more. His blood covering the mark of Garlemald, an emblem depicting 3 chains joined together. The one in the center painted red, in remembrance of those who have bled for the Empire. That night, there is a celebration held at Camp Broken Glass, and even Euless is invited, despite his many failings. Euless stumbles towards the fire, where an Alamegan soldier offers him a steaming cup. He watches the Eorzeans bickering, laughing, clashing in spirited debate, as though the world is not crumbling beneath them. They speak not as conquerors, nor as saviors, but simply as people. Euless, the proud soldier, the defiant patriot, finally breaks. His wall crumbles, and for the first time in too long, he allows himself to grieve, tears streaming down his cheeks. Then a sound shatters the fragile peace. A monstrous roar bellows from the Tower of Babel, another imposing spire, much like the Tower of Sot back in Thevnir. The radio crackles, carrying the unmistakable voice of a dead emperor. Warding talismans ignite as those unprotected begin to fall, their minds no longer their own, and in the chaos, a familiar voice calls to the warrior of light. The warrior turns to find a Lominsan soldier staring back. But it is not a soldier, it is Fandaniel. With a smile, the Ascian strikes, and darkness swallows the world as the warrior loses consciousness. The warrior awakens to an unusual sight. A dining table, a monstrous chamber, and across from him, Xenos, watching with quiet amusement. Hydaelyn welcomes the warrior with the glee of a host unveiling a grand feast and invites him to try out his new form. The warrior looks down, and an unnatural spectacle unfolds as he realizes that he is not in his own body. The limbs, the hands, the reflection staring back, they are a stranger to him as he is trapped in the form of a nameless Garlean soldier. Hydaelyn hums, pleased with himself, and tells the warrior that the mind-jacking technique he's now experiencing was conceived of long ago. However, Hydaelyn, ever the artist, has improved upon the science of stolen flesh. And then the roar is heard again, a terrible deafening sound from the depths of the chamber. The warrior stiffens in confusion, and Hydaelyn obliges him with an explanation. He tells the warrior that the Empire might have rejected gods and outlawed faith, but that belief cannot be erased, only redirected. Therefore, when war consumed Garlemald, the people cried out, not to the 12, nor to nameless deities, but to one figure who had towered over them for generations, Emperor Varys. Their desperation, their devotion, their final plea for salvation, all had been funneled into his rotting corpse. And from it a god was born, Anima. The towers, the chains, the siphoning of ether, all were mere conduits. The work of Anima, drawing strength from the world itself, feeding it to the Tower of Babel. Zenos cares for none of this. His hunger is singular. He tells the warrior that he has honed his craft, that he will make this battle worth the struggle, that their dance will be legendary. Then he reveals the warrior's true body. With a single smirk, Zenos wields his artificial echo, tearing his soul free and claiming the warrior's form as his own. He then vanishes, leaving the warrior trapped, nameless, and cast into a city teeming with tempered beasts. The warrior of light has fallen. Now, in the body of a common soldier, he must claw his way back to Camp Broken Glass, before his own flesh, worn by a monster, unleashes havoc upon the ones he holds dear. Through shattered streets and corridors of frostbitten ruins, the nameless Garlean soldier moves like a phantom, silent, unseen, a lone shadow in a city of ghosts. Their stolen body aches with wounds, the weight of unfamiliar limbs slowing each desperate step. Somewhere beyond the ruins, his true body awaits. Somewhere beyond this nightmare, the Scions are searching for him. At Camp Broken Glass, the crisis has been contained, wounds tended, minds unshackled, the tempered slowly reclaimed from the abyss. Yet one thing remains unresolved, the matter of the missing champion. Then, on the horizon, a lone figure stumbles into view. Excitement surges through G'raha and Alisaie, and a flood of relief washes over them at the sight of their friend's return. However, Y'shtola hesitates, her gaze narrowing. Something is wrong. The ether, subtle, shifting, is not as it should be, and then the false warrior smiles. A shadow ripples through the air as they raise a hand, summoning forth an avatar of the void. The twisted creature lunges, its claws thirsting for blood, only to be stopped mid-flight by the gleam of a thrown blade, piercing through its form and scattering it like mist. G'raha, Alisaie, and the impostor turn in unison to face the one who cast the blade. A lone Garlean knight stands at the edge of the battlefield, their voice raw as the warrior demands his body back. Zenos, wearing the stolen flesh of the warrior of light, meets the challenge with amusement. And then steel sings as the two clash in a vicious exchange. The impostor and the unknown knight locked in a battle neither was meant to fight. The world blurs. The unnatural bond between body and soul begins to unravel, and then Hydaelyn arrives. He watches the spectacle unfold with a smirk, folding his arms as if entertained, by a well-rehearsed play. The pieces fall into place. The beasts, the tempered, the suffering. It was all by his design. He needed time, needed them distracted, needed them occupied while he fed anima, while he gathered the ether that would undo the very foundations of the world. Xenos, now fully in control, turned to the warrior, still trapped in another's form. There is no urgency in his voice, no gloating, only certainty. He tells the warrior that he will feast upon his world, and asks him to render unto him all his hate, all his rage, so that he might savor their battle to the fullest. The warrior's vision darkens, and the stolen body collapses. As the warrior reawakens, he is surrounded by familiar voices, welcoming him back. His own limbs, his own flesh, returned. However, there is no time to recover further, as Fandaniel's plan nears its final stage, the Tower of Babel looming before them. Graha speaks of its name, the Old Allagan, meaning Gateway of the Gods, a title once given to the Void Gate of the Crystal Tower. But there is no time to dwell on history. A plan must be forged. The strategy is twofold: a full-scale assault to draw the Telephoros forces away, while a smaller strike team infiltrates the tower itself. The underground tunnels that once ferried Imperial supplies will now serve a different purpose, as the path of their salvation. Through steel corridors and the echoes of suffering, the Scions carve their way through the tower's defenses, and at its heart, the icon stirs. Anima, twisted, unnatural. A god born of grief and madness writhes against them with immeasurable fury. But it is not invincible, not today. When the beast falls, the group presses on, reaching the tower's pinnacle, where Fandaniel and Xenos stand waiting. The Tower of Babel, now brimming with gathered ether, suddenly fires its accumulated energy toward the heavens. Blast collides with the arcane defenses enshrining the moon, disrupting the prison that has held Zodiark for eons, or at least partly. Making haste for the moon, Xenos and Fandaniel then depart, using a transporter to finish the job. A moment later, Hydaelyn once again speaks through Kryl, her voice resonating as she explains the true nature of the seals. She tells them that the seals are a brand of etheric power, designed to keep the ancient god bound. But now nearly all of them have been shattered, with only one remaining. The warrior swiftly makes his choice, as he decides to pursue Xenos and Fandaniel to the moon, toward the unknown, toward the battle that will decide the fate of all. Upon setting foot on the moon, the warrior of light is enveloped by a voice, a resonance ancient and sorrowful, that beckons him forward. It is not a greeting, but a lament. The presence flickers, its words unraveling in agony before vanishing into the void. Then another force takes hold, a silent pull, leading the warrior through the lunar expanse to a grand crystalline bastion where an enigmatic figure awaits. The Watcher, the solemn guardian of the moon's lone prisoner, Zodiark. With a voice akin to a whispered memory, the Watcher unveils the devastation that has unfolded. 5 of the 6 great locks binding the fallen god have been obliterated. Only one remains, hastily restored. Yet its strength falters. The prison, once a sanctuary of sacrifice, has become a beacon for the lost, souls torn from time, now seeping into the desolate surface, their wails woven into the lunar wind. These spirits, bound to Zodiark's birth, linger in the twilight of existence, having been sacrificed to bring him forth. The warrior moves to confront the restless dead, only to be met with a tide of voices, pleas, accusations, confusion. They were promised salvation. They gave their lives to ensure the world endured. But where is the paradise they fought for? Why has their perfect star been reduced to ruin? The weight of their sorrow is suffocating. Just as the warrior begins to falter, a familiar voice cuts through the clamor. A quiet chuckle. a presence recognized not from this world, but from the recreated Amarot. It is none other than the true Hydaelyn that was sacrificed to Zodiark along with the other wandering souls. He gazes upon the warrior with knowing eyes, amusement laced with fondness. He has never met the warrior, and yet he believes in him, just as Emmet Selk did. With a parting smile, he turns to the anguished souls, promising to guide them back into a stillness while the warrior secures the final seal. But there is no time. A shattering sound ripples through the moon, the last seal trembling on the brink. The warrior rushes forward, guided by the spectral hound Argos, but arrives in time only to witness Xenos' scythe cleave the final pillar apart. The beast stirs. Fandaniel, eyes alight with euphoria, watches as the last remnants of control are torn away. Even incomplete, the entity stirs with unfathomable power, its very presence a discordant wail against existence. Now stripped of Elidibus, its heart, Zodiark is nothing more than raw primal hunger, a god without a master. Xenos barely glances at the rising calamity, his gaze locked upon his only quarry, the warrior. He calls him forward, offering battle as a mere appetizer for the slaughter to come. The warrior prepares to strike, but Fandaniel interjects with a playful smirk, offering to make things brief. And then, with the certainty of one who has long since cast aside fear, he leaps off the ledge. The depths of the moon devour him, his laughter turning into an echoing scream as his body is swallowed by the darkness below. And then it begins. The prison shatters, the void rushes forth, a vortex of suffocating oblivion, and the warrior is consumed by its maw. Suspended in shadow, the cries of the dead surround them. Zodiark's fragmented consciousness stirs, its myriad voices proclaiming its purpose, the savior of the world, the shield against destruction. But the tide is silenced as a new voice rises, mocking, triumphant. Fandaniel has become the heart of the beast. His essence seeks into the ancient god's broken will, forcing it into submission. The souls that once made up Zodiark cry out, their final desperate pleas falling to nothingness as they are devoured. To combat this apocalyptic threat, the warrior of light takes the crystal of Azam in hand and reaches beyond the void, calling upon forces unseen. And so, the battle begins. Zodiark's form, twisted by Fandaniel's control, moves with devastating force. He had originally intended to pit his fractured divinity against Xenos, but seeing as the warrior is already there, he ends up being the more tempting option. The warrior fights not to slay, but to prevent the god's corruption from consuming all. In the end, he succeeds. However, victory is but a fleeting illusion. Fandaniel, battered but unbowed, speaks his final words, a parting gift. This was always the plan. With the last of his strength, he forces Zodiark's own claws into its chest, rendering the god asunder. A being never meant to fall is unmade before their eyes, its divine essence fracturing into nothingness. The first primal, the last wall against annihilation, gone. As the dark god crumbles, Fandaniel welcomes the warrior to the final days, and with a final bitter laugh, he vanishes, his soul scattering into the ether. During his last moments, Fandaniel ruminates about how the man he was would weep for what he has now become, and the all-consuming contempt he harbors towards life. However, he claims that he is justified by the wisdom of 10 millennia, which helped him find the answer to the question of existence, ultimately choosing to end it. All shall return to nothingness. The warrior of light awakens, the moon eerily silent. Where once stood Zodiark's prison, a chasm gapes, bleeding crimson light into the abyss. The air trembles with an unseen force. A vision floods the warrior's mind, a world unraveling, skies choked with fire, reality itself corroding into a nightmare. The Watcher's voice, steady, even in the face of calamity, pulls the warrior back. It was no illusion. It was the truth of what is to come. The final days have begun. Before the weight of this revelation can settle, another figure emerges from the abyss, Xenos. But for once, his blade is still. He sneers unimpressed. His quarry is distracted, consumed by thoughts of greater threats. He will not fight the warrior while his mind is elsewhere. No, he will seek power, drown the world in despair, and only then, when the warrior has nothing left but rage, will they face each other in battle once more. He walks away, his presence like a shadow cast over the coming storm. The Watcher turns to the warrior, revealing that his allies now await his return. The warrior follows the Watcher back to the tower, where Thancred, Urianger, and Y'shtola await. Their expression is grim. After sharing what they have learned, they delve into the tower's records, uncovering long-buried truths regarding the unimaginable efforts required to keep Zodiark bound, and the Ascians' refusal to free him before his full strength was restored. As they piece together the mystery, the Watcher speaks of the final days, and a world before the Great Sundering, where there was but a single world, Etheris. The Watcher recounts the ancient calamity, a catastrophe that began with a single sound, a roar from the heart of the planet that twisted creation itself, warping the ancients' magics into abominations of suffering. It spread like an unseen plague, striking wherever the ether grew stagnant. Zodiark was their answer, a god of darkness, of movement, of change, rewriting the very laws of nature to halt the decay. Hydaelyn knew this truth. She knew that slaying Zodiark would unmake the balance that kept the world safe. So she sundered the god, the world, and even herself. She weakened him, imprisoned him, sacrificing her own power to hold the chaos at bay. But now Zodiark is no more. Thancred asks the question that hangs heavy in the air. If the final days consume the source, what of its reflections? However, the answer is chilling in its simplicity. If the source falls, all else follows. Suddenly the moon trembles, and the Watcher turns skyward. A new plan must be enacted. They must rely on the lunar arc for survival. The arc is a final contingency, forged long ago by Hydaelyn. In the case all else fails, the moon will serve as a vessel carrying the people of Etheris to another home, and its pilots await. The Watcher leads the Scions to Argos, who guides them to a great door, where the truth about their moon-piloting saviors awaits. As the Scions enter, they are greeted to the sight of a horde of creatures, small and furred, who scurry around in a flurry of movement. They prepare, plan, chatter in excitement. Their leader, a sprightly rabbit-like being named Livingway, greets them with enthusiasm. They are the Loporites, and they are the architects of Hydaelyn's great exodus. Loporites are thrilled to finally meet some of the people they are meant to help ferry to some distant star, where they might find a new home. However, the Scions exchange glances as unease begins to settle in. Livingway's knowledge is outdated, and the Loporite preparations are therefore laughably insufficient. In an attempt to mend this error, Urianger, ever the mediator, stays behind to aid them, while the rest of the Scions return to Etheris, determined to stop the final days before Hydaelyn's exodus becomes a necessity. As they return to Old Sharlayan, the citizens have gathered to hear what the Forum has to say. The members of the Forum finally break the enchantment placed upon them by unanimous decree, so that they may unveil their secret, the truth of Hydaelyn's warning, the coming apocalypse, and the celestial exodus that has been in the making for generations. Understandably, however, not everyone is so eager to abandon their world and brave a new frontier, so this revelation is met with some reservations. despite perhaps being their only hope of salvation. Afterwards, Fortuno faces his children once more, as they explain to him how they have chosen to live their lives. He does not apologize for his treatment of them. He does not waver. But in his eyes, the truth is clear. He is proud. All he asks is that they do not get in their way. That night, the warrior dreams. The voice from the moon calls again. The vision returns. The sky burns. And in Thavnia, the nightmare begins. A cry for help has come from Radzad-Han as the final days have begun. The sky burns. The land writhes. The very air festers with corruption, and from its depths, unspeakable creatures arise. Upon arriving in Thavnia, the sky bleeds fire, and the chaos strangles the city. The acting satrap, Hydaelyn, meets them with graven words, telling them that the monstrosities consuming Thavnia are not mere invaders. They are its very people, twisted beyond all recognition. Their torment began with a single towering beast, an ancient horror reborn. Vertra, the true leader of the city, has flown north to Vanaspati in a desperate attempt to aid those still clinging to life. But the satrap fears that the worm's mercy will be his undoing. Aboard a storm-tossed boat, the Scions race to the jungle's depths and to Vertra's aid. The journey is a waking nightmare, as along the path they witness more people succumbing. Friends, children, lovers, all unraveling into monstrosities before their eyes. At the heart of this ruin, they face the original blasphemy itself. It shrieks a final tortured lament. "I'm ruined," before crumbling into dark mist. Silence follows, but it is not peace. Y'shtola steps forward, her vision bound to the unseen flow of ether due to her blindness. But she sees nothing. Nothing at all. There is no ether within the beast. No life. No soul to reclaim. A harrowing realization washes over her as she recalls the Watcher's warning on the moon. Ether does not simply decay. It stagnates. It dies. The creatures before them are not merely transformed. They are the result of utter oblivion, and as such, can never be saved, as there is nothing left to save. Hydaelyn and Vertra rejoin them, the former pleading for the Great Worm to step out of the shadows and lead his people as their true ruler. However, Vertra resists, claiming that mortals should not see him as their king, lest fear tighten its grip in these most fragile days. The Scions agree to assist in stabilizing Radzad-Han, while Vertra, joined by Estinian, continues his desperate defense of the sky. Back in the city, the Scions scatter to uncover the catalyst of this disaster. A single name surfaces: Khalzal. Once a merchant, once a man, now something else entirely. It began with failure, with loss, with ruin. The weight of shattered deals, broken dreams, and an irredeemable future crushed him until his despair swallowed him whole. He was the first, but he will not be the last. The truth is inescapable. Despair is the trigger. Graha and the warrior recall a harrowing detail. Khalzal transformed before the skies turned red. Alisei's heart sinks at the implication. There is no warning. There will be no signs before another falls. The final days are already here. Panic stirs in the streets. A lone woman pleads for Hydaelyn to save her grandson in the village of Palaka's Stand. However, her cries are answered not by reassurance, but by ill fate. Matsya stumbles into the square, breathless, bearing news that monsters have descended upon the village. And then the woman transforms into a blasphemous monster. A convulsing wail splits the air as dark mist spills from her form. Her despair is contagious, as a single scream becomes 100. One transformation ignites another and another, until the city itself writhes in agony. Chaos erupts, yet Hydaelyn, unwavering, shields a grief-stricken father who had just lost his son, only to fall in his stead. All seems lost as the people of Radzad-Han lose the man they believe to be their leader. However, with a resolute breath, G'raha rises to the occasion and slams his staff against the ground, his voice rising above the madness. He is the Exarch once more. He commands, he steadies, he restores order. The battle turns in their favor. Half the Scions remain to aid the people of the city, while the warrior and the twins race toward Palaka's stand. Receiving news of what has transpired via Linkshell, Estinian confronts Vertra as he tells him of Ahaiwan's untimely demise. The former Azure Dragoon speaks plainly. Fulfill his final wish. Reveal yourself to your people. Vertra hesitates, drowning in the fear of rejection, but Estinian does not waver. If mortals and dragons were meant to be enemies, the Dragon Song War would have never ended. If we were doomed to fail, Raisvelgur and Shiva would have never found love. Meanwhile in the village, the search for Matsia's friends begins. A husband, a wife, a child. When the husband is found, his wounds are fatal. His final breath is a plea, "Save my family." The search continues. Then, a scream. The wife is found moments too late, her body wrenched and discarded like a doll. The child falls into a pool of water, and the warrior dives after it. Emerging from the water, child in hand, he finds the battle growing ever more dire. The twins are struggling, the horrors are multiplying. There is no choice. The warrior must entrust the safety of the child to Matsia as he commands him to run. But hope is a fickle thing. Matsia flees. Yet in his arms the infant stirs. A faint cry, a wisp of shadow, and then darkness. The newborn, innocent and unknowing, begins to unravel, and so does Matsia. Terror seizes his heart. The mist curls around him as he faces the prospect of losing the child. The jaws of despair are about to close, until steel rends it asunder. Blades slice through the abyss, carving salvation from ruin. A streak of light, a dragon's cry, Estinian and Vertra descend from the heavens, tearing through the darkness. The Matanga and the child are saved. And at last Vertra speaks his truth. Before the people of Palaka stand, before all of Radzad Han. He reveals his true identity, and they do not cower, they do not flee, they welcome him. Estinian and Alphino exchange quiet smiles. Somewhere in another time, Ysael would have wept with joy to see dragon and man come together in peace. But their moment of peace is brief. Visitors have come from Shalayan, led by none other than Forshino. In the name of the Forum, he comes bearing an offer of salvation, telling the inhabitants of Thavnia to escape with them to the moon, to flee while there is time. Vertra leaves the choice to his people, but in his heart he questions whether running is truly the answer. Elsewhere, Nidhana and the Scions study the blasphemies. They should not be able to move. They should not exist. They are void of ether, yet they endure. A single theory emerges. Akasa, negative emotion given form. To test it, the Warrior of Light unveils the heart bloom he received in Labyrinthos and watches it blacken to dust. The answer is clear, but the path is not. Only a single thread remains. Elpis, name given to the heart bloom flower in times of old, a whisper from the past. Alizé voices what they're all thinking. There is no one left who can tell them its meaning. But G'raha speculates that might not be entirely the case, as the Warrior of Light might be able to converse with remnants of Elidibus saved within the Crystal Tower on the first. Beneath the tower in a hidden chamber, the warrior activates a long-forgotten mechanism, conjuring a spectral remnant of Elidibus. The once proud Ascian is diminished now, stripped of purpose, and burdened by a question he cannot fully answer. Zodiark is gone, and he no longer feels his presence. Elidibus reveals that he never knew Elpis as a flower, but rather as a place, a testing ground for nascent life, guided by a man named Hermes, whose name would later darken into infamy as Fandaniel. With the last of his fading essence, Elidibus opens a rift in the weave of time and casts the warrior into the age before the Sundering. However, he warns him that time is a river that cannot be diverted. One may walk its banks and observe its flow, but the past cannot be changed. Thus begins the journey to Elpis. Upon arrival, the warrior finds himself seemingly miniature in stature, merely ankle-high compared to the towering ancients. The sheer density of their ether overwhelming in comparison. By chance, or perhaps fate, he is discovered by two members of the Convocation of 14, the ever-withly Hydaelyn and the skeptical yet sharp-tongued Emet-Selch. Mistaking the warrior for a familiar of Azem, they grant him strength, form, and attire befitting the age. Their path leads to Hermes, found attending to a curious flock of aquatic creatures in the company of a childlike figure adorned with blue feathers, Meteion. In halting words, and then through clear telepathy, she confesses a kinship with the warrior. They are both different. Hydaelyn detects her fragile etheric signature, and Hermes admits she is his project, one not yet registered with the Bureau. The trio joins Hermes for a formal meeting. Emet-Selch brings important news. Hermes has been chosen to succeed his mentor as the next Fandaniel, but the honor is soured. His mentor is chosen to return to the star, a euphemism for death. Meteion, unfamiliar with such customs, asks the unthinkable. Is he going to die? Hermes is left shaken by the question. Among ancients, death is viewed as noble, an offering of one's essence back to the planet. Yet Hermes cannot comprehend why any soul would choose to vanish willingly. As the meeting ends, Hermes asks the warrior to accompany Meteion for a while. Away from the solemnity of duty, she shares more of herself, her power to sense and project emotions, her telepathy, merely the mind's attempt to interpret raw feeling. She grows distressed when those around her are upset, as she did with Hermes. Later, joined again by Hermes, the group stumbles upon a field of Elpis flowers, strange blooms that respond to emotional energy. Like Meteion, they are entelechies, life forms able to interact directly with emotions. As such, they are able to detect Akasa, or dynamis, as it is known in Elpis, dynamis being an elusive force born from feeling, far weaker than ether, but abundant in the vastness beyond the stars. Hermes wonders aloud, what if one day dynamis could overwhelm even the mighty flow of ether? And he chuckles, but behind the laugh hides intention. Meteion, he reveals, was born to test that very idea. As they explore Elpis, Hermes continues his passionate defense of flawed life forms, creatures others would discard. He works to preserve. His colleagues argue for euthanization and redesign through magic. Hermes resists. These lives, however imperfect, are still lives. He even created a device, Kairos, to overwrite memory, an alternative to death. Then comes the news. A group of creatures has begun killing others without cause. Hermes departs, entrusting Meteion once more to the warrior. She confesses that Hermes sees life differently. Where others see tools, he sees potential. She wishes to cheer him up and leads the warrior to another patch of Elpis flowers. They darken, just as they do for Hermes. The shared sadness stirs something in him. For the first time, he sees he is not alone in his sorrow. Gazing skyward, Hermes speaks of the other stars, worlds unknown, possibly filled with life and dreams alien to their own. He confesses Meteion is not alone. He created countless sisters who have already taken flight into the cosmos to ask a single question. What do others live for? Soon after, Hermes is forced to destroy a violent creature he once tried to protect. He speaks gently to one as it dies, telling it to return with hatred in its heart if it must. Mankind may deserve it. Emet-Selch pushes him again to join the convocation. This time, Hermes' reply is different, darker. He sneers, asking what the point is. If perfection is the end goal, and they must all die to attain it, what meaning is left? His voice twists, revealing the shadow of the Fandaniel to come. The warrior journeys onward with Emet-Selch and Hydaelyn, and soon encounters a woman unlike the rest, Venat, the former Azem. Venat sees through the illusion instantly, as she identifies the warrior as a traveler from the future. Recognizing the blessing of light, as her own traveler's ward. Pressed for answers, the warrior shares the truth about Zodiark, Hydaelyn, and the end of the world. Emet-Selch rejects it all, scoffing at the idea that he would fall so far. He storms out, leading Hydaelyn to follow after him. But Venat stays. Together with the warrior, she begins to unravel Hermes' research, his obsession with Dynamis, the creation of Meteion, and the mystery of the stars. She reveals her own truth. She has not returned to the star because she still believes in the boundless potential of mankind. She will wait as long as it takes until the world no longer needs her. They discover that Hermes regularly visits a secluded floating island. A researcher witnessed a flock of blue-feathered girls departing into the sky. To pursue them, Venat calls her familiar, Argos, the loyal moon dog. But Argos won't acknowledge the warrior. Venat insists the warrior proves himself through battle. She tests the warrior personally. Blades flash, spells collide, but the warrior prevails. Argos, satisfied, grants them passage. On the island, Venat uses the echo to glimpse the past. They see Meteion, part of a vast, interlinked consciousness, receiving updates from her distant sisters. Hermes had sent them not out of ambition, but hope, a belief that others out there might value life as he does. But good intentions can still birth calamity. They find Hermes once more and share the truth of what's to come. Hermes listens and agrees. The final days sound like a phenomenon of Dynamis, an emotional poison seeping through the cracks in the star's defenses. If it comes from beyond, then it may already be too late. Before the group can act, Meteion collapses, her body racked by overwhelming despair. Her sisters have returned with her answers from the worlds they visited, worlds that are all now gone, civilizations extinguished by war, sacrifice, or suicide. Their conclusion: life exists only to suffer. Meteion declares that she and her sisters will build a nest at the end of the universe and sing a requiem, one so powerful it will tear through ether and silence all suffering with death. Despite everything, Hermes agrees and chooses not to dismiss Meteion's answer. If the people of Etheirys are so eager to discard flawed life, why should they be spared judgment? He makes a wager. If humanity can prove itself, it will be allowed to endure. Otherwise, it too shall perish. To ensure fairness, he activates Kairos, meaning that all memories of this moment, of Meteion, of the truth, will be erased. Only Venat and the warrior manage to escape, thanks to a clever ruse by Emet-Selch and Hydaelyn. As Argos bears them away, Emet-Selch offers a final plea. Do not squander it, the legacy I leave you. Back in the present, only Venat and the warrior remember what truly transpired. She fears that telling the convocation would fracture them and lead them to lose Hermes' research forever. So she sets forth to find her own answer to his question, to stand apart, to prepare for the despair yet to come in her own way. On his way back to the present, the warrior of light bears witness to the final days. He sees Venat stand strong as despair consumes the world, as the ancients cry to Zodiark to restore their paradise. Venat stands alone and refuses. With blade in hand, she declares the end of the old order. No longer will mankind fly above sorrow. They will walk through it. There will be no paradise without shadows. She will become Hydaelyn, and she will sunder the world. She suffers excruciating pain, breathing fire and torment as she births a world of suffering and death. 14 shards will remain where once there was one, and in their fragmented lives the people will suffer, bleed, and die. But in that crucible, she hopes they will find meaning. And when they cry to the heavens, "Why must we suffer?" Hydaelyn will answer, "To grow strong, to find your purpose." For the end still comes. They must be ready to face the song of oblivion, to find amidst even the deepest despair, light everlasting. The warrior of light returns to the present day, burdened with the knowledge gleaned from ancient Elpis. But upon reaching the Baldesian annex, he finds the halls empty. The Scions have already deployed to Garlemald, aiding in the desperate evacuation of Radzat Han's refugees via the lunar bridge. The final days, it seems, have reached even the frozen heart of the fallen empire. Amidst the blizzards and chaos outside the capital, Fortuno struggles to keep order. Panic and fear ripple through the refugees as monstrous blasphemies descend like vultures. Despite their differences, the Scions come to Fortuno's aid, becoming the last bulwark against collapse. Alphino tending wounds under Astinian's watchful eye, Graha and Alizé locked in brutal rhythm, carving down the horrors with a quiet, relentless fury. Even Iullus, once a bitter enemy, now fights to defend people without concern for their allegiances. And then, through the veil of snow and death, the warrior of light at last returns. His arrival shifts the tide, the battlefield pivoting in an instant, as the onslaught of despair is beaten back, long enough for the refugees to escape. Using this short moment of respite, Fortuno, weary and bloodied, extends a hand to those present, telling them that Sharlayan will offer what safety it can, and that he will defend them to his last breath, as they prepare for their evacuation from this world. Before they can depart, however, Xenos appears, calm, detached, and disappointed. He has come to slay a new manner of beast, but deems the blasphemies unfit to temper his blade. Upon being reunited with the Warrior of Light, he wonders whether he is ready to finish their game, but finds the warrior still all too tangled up in the world's salvation. As he turns to leave, Iullus confronts him, rage barely held in check. Why? Why let it all burn? Xenos answers with brutal honesty, telling him that aside from the battles he has sought, everything else seems meaningless. What response would soothe Iullus's pain, he wonders aloud. What justification could cleanse the blood? None. And that, Xenos claims, is what makes him different. He wears no illusions of honor or duty to mask his sins. Alizé tells him he'll die alone and empty if he keeps living for nothing but carnage. Xenos doesn't argue. He simply walks away. As he leaves, Fortuno returns and tells the Scions they are welcome on their airship, at last fully acknowledging that their deeds are deserving of gratitude, despite not always agreeing with their methods. Once alone, Astinian comments that Alphino will one day be after his father's seat in the Forum, the thought seemingly meeting with Fortuno's approval. Back at Camp Broken Glass, the Scions take a moment to debrief. Lucia confirms what they feared. The capital has fallen into chaos. Maxima holds the line, but she needs reinforcements. And now that Iullus has returned, she intends to send him and his team back into the storm. Iullus is shocked. They're handing Garleans weapons? But the answer is clear. Yesterday's sins mean little compared to tomorrow's deeds. Before they can discuss the matter further, a voice echoes from the distance, soft, dazed, and unmistakably odd. Poor Ding. A tiny figure shuffles into view. The Loporites have arrived, along with Urianger. Having waited in vain on the moon, they decided to see Etheris for themselves, before it was too late. Fortuno is stunned to meet the Forum's mysterious collaborators in the flesh, but nevertheless manages to offer them a warm, albeit slightly bewildered, welcome. In Old Sharlayan, the Scions are invited to the Forum, so that they can be briefed on the plan for the Great Exodus. The Scions proceed to ask the Forum about the details of their ambitious undertaking to ferry as much life as they can off the planet before its demise, even though they cannot take everyone along for the ride. As such, they intend to prioritize their allies and those unlikely to spark conflict. To do this, they've constructed an operational starship which flies, but at the present there's a problem with the speed at which it moves. Having listened to what the Forum has to say, Alphino steps forward, makes an offer. The Scions will help to optimize the ship in exchange for two things. First, an audience with Hydaelyn, since the Forum has found a way to reach the ethereal sea. Second, Alphino wishes to propose a different use for the vessel, should they succeed, although he doesn't divulge the nature of his proposal at present. The majority of the Forum agrees to the Scions' terms, even though Fortuno is among those who oppose his son's daring suggestion. To execute their plan, the Scions descend into the bowels of Labyrinthos, where the Ether Burner, a colossal engine fit for spaceflight, awaits. However, its creator, Kokol, curses the limits of his design. Another 0.6% might be possible, but they need 6% to reach the speed they need. Kokol says that it would be possible with elegant refined adamantite, but regrettably they cannot get enough of the material, since no one knows how to make it anymore. Just as he finishes his tale of woe, however, Alphinaud was already calling in favors from across the world to secure the necessary materials. In Ul'dah, the Sultana rallies factions and guilds. Even Lolorito is given free reign, so long as the necessary materials are procured. In the Black Shroud, Arusenna worries over not having enough manpower, until Lys and the Resistance arrive. In Querthas, Emmanuelaine and Artorel pray at Haurchefant's grave, their silence broken by a mighty dragon's roar. Meanwhile, in the Ruby Sea, Hancock and Soroban strike a deal. All of this so that Alphinaud's plan can come to fruition. At last, the shipments arrive. The docks overflow with crates and gifts, relics, alloys, and refined adamantite from across the globe. The Sky Pirates, the Prima Vista, the Blue Kojin, the East Aldenar Trading Company, all heeding the Scion's call. All debts have been paid, they're told, by Tataru, with coin earned from her enterprises, and by Emilians, who has funded the rest in secret. Kryl arrives with her gleaners who defied the Forum. The Garland Ironworks also join the effort, with Nitana bringing scales infused with the power of ancient worms. Kokol stares in awe as he foresees that the output for the ship would now exceed his wildest imagination. With the work complete, Fortunaud pulls his children aside. Is this truly what they want? To carry the fate of every soul on their shoulders? Alphinaud answers simply. They've seen too much beauty to let it all fade. Fortunaud embraces them at last, not as a Forum member, but as their father. He admits that he once swore to bear every burden for them, but now he sees they've grown stronger than he ever imagined. He no longer needs to shield them. He can stand beside them. To meet with Hydaelyn, the Scions are led into Thaumasine, the hidden heart of Labyrinthos. There they're brought to a great lift, one that leads not up, but down, into the ethereal sea itself. The Scions descend, facing shades of past enemies that have returned to the ethereal sea. Ilberd, Livia, Ritatin, and guided by fallen allies, Papalimo, Haurchefant, Moenbrida, and Minfilia. At the journey's end stands Amon, grinning, malicious, and full of pain. After a battle with Amon, the warrior asks him if he remembers Elpis. Something stirs. Amon confesses he saw Elpis in his dreams, long before he awakened as an Ascian. Hermes' erasure didn't cleanse his soul. It carved those memories deeper into it, so much that even in death they linger. But it wasn't the past that broke him, it was the present. The cruelty he saw in mankind. He decided, as Meteion had, that life was only suffering. Yet he still hesitates and wonders whether there could be another answer, another way. As he hesitates, another voice mocks him. A familiar face emerges. Asahi, the one who Fandaniel the Ascian had used as a puppet. He does not care that his body was used, but he will not forgive Amon for desecrating it by using it to betray his lord, Xenos. To exact his revenge, Asahi drags Amon into oblivion, their fates sealed together. With her final guardian defeated, the Scions reach the Mother Crystal and Hydaelyn herself. She warns them that Meteion waits at the end of all things, in a realm of pure dynamis. Ether is meaningless there. Emotions will shape reality. Despair will strike as a weapon. Alisaie admits her doubt. Once she would have stood tall. Now she quakes. Hydaelyn answers not with comfort, but truth. Suffering cannot be erased, it must be endured. To prove their strength, she demands they face her at full might, and the Scions accept her challenge. The battle is fierce, and when it ends, Hydaelyn collapses, her divine light spent. She admits her sundering was no mercy, but rather a necessity. However, now mankind has surpassed her. They no longer need gods. She gives the Scions a crystal, traced with Meteion's path, and reveals that the Mother Crystal itself holds the ether they need to reach across the sea of stars. To the Warrior of Light she offers one final gift, a blessing of stillness, of peace, drawn from the Crystal of Azam, the laws which impart stability to existence itself. The last words echo from long ago. When the path forward is hidden, even from the mind's eye, look not to the invocation, but within yourself. Having done her part to thwart the final days, by passing her strength and wisdom onto her chosen champions, the goddess then vanishes without a trace. The Scions recount what has passed, and their many adventures. The Loperites busy themselves with preparations, anything to distract from the grief of losing Hydaelyn. In the royal gardens of Alamigo, Xenos broods in silence. He remembers Alisae's words, and wonders, what did he seek, truly, in that last battle? And what did the Warrior of Light seek in return? As dawn breaks over Labyrinthos, the Loperites rush through final preparations with twitching ears and unshakable resolve. Meanwhile, the Scions quietly see to the last threads of their personal lives. Some revisit cherished memories, others embrace loved ones beneath the golden light of a peaceful day, knowing it may be their last. The day of reckoning has arrived. In the Baldesian Annex, the Scions gather, a company forged in fire and tribulation. From the stolen crystals of the waking sands to the revelations in the first, they recall their journey with pride, pain, and purpose. Now they prepare to reach the outermost edge of existence, Ultima Thule. Kryl urges them to claim triumph, however they choose to define it. Tataru, voice trembling, sends them off as the Scions descend into Tamasine one final time to board the vessel that will help them traverse the stars. Within the vast hangar, Sid and Foshino confirm the vessel is primed. The Loperites have completed modifications, attaching their hyperhopper to extend its reach into the unknown. This vessel is a fruit of untold collaboration, the culmination of a world's hope. Named for the fragment of Dalamud that first brought the plans to fruition, they christen it Ragnarok. Sekard arrives, joined by representatives from the Beast Tribes. Livingway explains that the Mother Crystal cannot be moved, but that its ether has been transmuted into a new form, primal avatars, summoned through unity rather than religious zealotry. These purified gods, born of Hydaelyn's teachings, and the tribe's will fuel Ragnarok's flight without the risk of tempering. Mo and Brida's parents then present the Scions with a teleportation device, a failsafe to bring everyone back home should the worst occur. With engines ablaze and summoned gods flying in their wake, Ragnarok tears through the sky. As they pass into Ultima Thule, a realm shaped by emotion and unmoored from reality, the ship trembles, lights flicker, then she appears. Meteon welcomes them with a chilling calm. She says they needn't have come, as she assures them she will soon free their world from suffering. The Scions reject her mercy and vow to end her nihilistic rampage. Suddenly they are overcome by Dynamis as they collapse one by one. Only Thancred endures. He rises, body trembling, and hurls himself toward Meteon for one final strike. They awaken in silence. Thancred is gone, so is Meteon, but the world around them is solid, breathable, walkable. Meteon reappears to taunt them. Thancred, she claims, is everywhere. His body may be gone, but his will lingers. Thancred's last wish for them to survive was enough to reshape Ultima Thule, granting air and light. As Meteon vanishes, the Scions press onward. Urianger notes that Thancred's state resembles their existence on the first. He may yet endure. They find more dragons, this time visible to all. From them, they learn of a ruined star, devoured by a great war, its remnants succumbing to corruption. Their last hope had been to flee, but even across the stars they found only more conflict, so they chose to do nothing. Estinian confronts a dragon mired in despair. Nikazormer found a new home, Estinian says, but yes, there was conflict. The dragon deems inaction the wiser path. Estinian, however, disagrees, saying that peace comes not from retreat, but from understanding your enemy. The dragon bursts into Dynamis, engulfing the dragoon. Estinian turns to his comrades, offers a final nod, and vanishes. As a result, a gust of wind dispels the miasma, and the path forward opens. Next lies a strange land of crystalline sand and forgotten runes. They meet the Ea, disembodied minds striving to regain physical form so they can die properly. Once they sought enlightenment through ascension, but in their search for knowledge, they discovered the universe's end, a slow, freezing death in eternal silence. Despair became their truth. As a scholar, Y'shtola refuses their conclusion. Knowledge does not demand despair, it offers the chance to understand. When the Ea attack, she stands her ground, and Urianger joins her, declaring he is never stronger than when supporting a friend. Together they walk into the storm. A pillar of light erupts and Meteion appears. She is impressed. 2 dead civilizations have stirred due to their influence. Alizé steps forward, declaring that they will not stop until they find her. Meteion gestures to the sky, to the dead sun above. Her nest. Souls gathered there do not return to the star. There is no rebirth, only stillness. She warns them they must hurry, or their fallen friend's protection will fade. The 4 remaining scions travel to a floating island of steel and silence. Here dwell the Omicrons, machines of relentless evolution. Their leader, Sir, awaits a report that will never come. G'raha locates an isolated unit, pondering a tree that still grows for no reason at all. He confronts it with a question. What is the purpose of endless strength? When all is conquered, what remains? The machine cannot answer. G'raha offers a story, his story, of a man who dreamed through despair and chose to keep going. As the machine succumbed to Dynamis, G'raha vanishes, leaving nary a trace of himself. Now only the warrior and the twins remain. They find a hollow world, a place already emptied of life before Meteion arrived. Alphonor proposes a path forward, a chance to finish this, and a chance to live. The twins turn to Meteion and tell her, this world is not empty. She is here. They remind her fear, failure, despair, none of it is the end. Not unless you let it be. Meteion lashes out and the twins are consumed by Dynamis, allowing the Warrior of Light to keep moving forward. In Ultima Thule, the Warrior of Light ascends alone, but not without hope. They summon Azem's crystal, and from the depths of memory, Emet-Selch and Hydaelyn emerge. With creation magic, they sow a field of white Elpis flowers, which become proof that even this desolate realm is not completely devoid of hope. Meteion, overcome by this revelation, falls to her knees, and hope takes root. As a result, the scions are restored. But the nest shudders. Dark Dynamis pours forth. The Song of Oblivion is not yet over. Before disappearing, Emet-Selch asks the warrior whether he has been to the ruins beneath the waters of the Bounty, whether he has visited the treasure islands beyond the frozen waters of the Blind Frost. He asks whether he has seen the fabled gold cities of the New World, or the sacred sites of the forgotten people of the South Sea Isles. What does he know of Merocidia, the southern continent, of the true nature of the 12? The message is clear. Warrior must save the world, for there is still so much to experience, so many adventures to be had. The 2 ancients then take their final leave. The warrior leads the charge. Meteion pulls the scions through memories of lost worlds, yet they still stand. Meteion screams. She fuses with her sisters, becoming the End Singer. The scions fight her, but to no avail. Worlds crash, time twists, sorrow repeats. At the brink, the warrior sacrifices his chance of return by teleporting his comrades away to keep them safe. Alone, he faces the End Singer. Suddenly the skies break, and Xenos descends as Shinryu reborn, not as a foe, but as a partner in this final dance. He has made the journey by gorging himself on the Mother Crystal and reclaiming the form of a dragon. Together they battle despair itself, and as the End Singer ultimately falls, the Sea of Dynamis grows quiet. Meteion, having returned to her original size, asks the warrior if they can be friends. He takes her hand in his. She sees them. There was never one answer. Each life walks its own path. The universe is a garden of blooms, not a singular design. Her feathers turn blue once more, and she returns to her former cheery self. She offers to guide the warrior back, but one last matter remains, as Xenos demands his due. He asks for no titles, no talk of heroes or villains, no justification, just a duel, adventurer to adventurer. They fight not as enemies, but as two who have sought purpose in the clash. At the end, Xenos falters. Was life a gift or a burden? He asks. Did you find fulfillment? And with those words, Xenos is no more. Before darkness takes the warrior as well, a teleportation beacon falls from the sky. It activates, and the warrior of light returns to the Ragnarok. There he is greeted by cheers and tears. He is home. The final days have ended, and the people of Eorzea are once again safe, the torch having been passed to them from the ancients. Sometime later, Alphino pens a letter. The Scions formally disband. Their work is done for now. Each goes their own way. To rebuild, to study, to wander. Tataru remains, turning the Rising Stones into a workshop and a refuge. When they ask what comes next, the Warrior of Light looks to the sky, where a blue bird glides across the new dawn, a smile on his face. Patch 6.1 Newfound Adventure. With the end of the world behind him, the Warrior of Light is free to go on his own adventures. After some time, the warrior pays a visit to Tataru. Over tea and laughter, they talk of simpler times, of quests without cataclysm, and quiet roads not walked in ages. Tataru, ever the instigator of destiny, suggests some old-fashioned adventuring. Her tip leads the warrior to Radzat-Han, and to a tavern where a drunken professor slurs secrets regarding a treasure map rumored to lead to Azjadal's legacy, a hidden trove of otherworldly riches at the bottom of the bounty, just as Emmett Selk had foretold. At the market, the warrior spots a shady merchant staging a clumsy performance with a boy to sell the map. But before they can act, Estinian strides forward and purchases it with a heavy pouch of gil. His reason? To use the treasure to build a relief fund for the people of Radzat-Han who suffered during the final days. A noble cause, and one that earns him the warrior's partnership. After securing a ship, however, they realize they are in need of more allies. Braha joins with glee. Urianger arrives bearing blueprints for Loperate vaults, and Y'shtola is intrigued by whispers of otherworldly plunder. Together they sail to the Marked Isle and unlock enchanted passageways that lead to the ocean floor. Beneath the waves lies treasure beyond imagination. But more intriguing is a sealed alchemical chamber. As they attempt to open it, Varshahan intervenes, declaring that it can only be unsealed on his authority. Within lies not gold, but a faint, active planar gate, leading to the 13th, more commonly known as the Void. Y'shtola is immediately fascinated by this phenomenon. Varshahan explains, ages ago, during the war between the Alagans and Merocidia, Bahamut fell, and the Merocidians summoned the Warring Triad. Emperor Zande responded by forging a pact with the Cloud of Darkness. The battle seemed eternal until Vertra's sister, Azdaia, dove into the Void Gate to seal it, never to return. Vertra, torn between duty and devotion, hid this smaller gate beneath the sea and sealed it to prevent calamity. Far away in the desolate 13th, a knight in black armor sits upon a throne, speaking to 4 unseen elemental lieutenants. They have sensed the gate stirring, and beyond it, the mortal who bested the Cloud of Darkness. The knight warns them, be patient. Their war for redemption is just beginning. Back in Thavnir, Y'shtola asks to study the gate, while Estinian and the warrior assist Varshahan in deciding how best to use the treasure. After meeting with locals, it's agreed. Funds will revitalize trade, with a portion reserved to build an orphanage for those left parentless in the wake of the final days. Meanwhile, Y'shtola investigates planar mechanics. Unlike soul travel through the rift, gates like this allow full passage, if widened. Old records mentioned an artificial void scent used to expand such gates, but the method is lost. Hydaelyn nevertheless smiles as she knows exactly where to find what they are looking for. In Sharlayan, she and the warrior gain special access to the Numenor archives, a massive collection of scrolls and tomes said to be the largest of its kind. There they find the text Hydaelyn was hoping for, a guide to crafting an artificial automos, using a crystal to replicate the resonance needed to widen the gate. Returning to Thamnia, they enlist Nitana's help and test the void gate's danger. To do so, Hydaelyn summons 2 Nixies using a rather embarrassing incantation from her past. She then equips one of them with a warding scale and sends them into the void. As they make their way back, only the protected one returns unscathed. The test confirms it. They'll need enhanced protection. Hydaelyn sets off to the Garland Ironworks, hoping Nero can assist. Meanwhile, the people at the Great Work in Thamnia begin constructing the artificial automos. In Radzad-Han, Varshan wrestles with duty and desire. The citizens gather and urge him to go so that he might save his sister, Asdaya. They will manage without him. Varshan finally agrees. His dragon form will however remain behind, even as his heart and mind cross the void. Elsewhere in the shifting shadows of the 13th, a familiar silhouette emerges. The void-sent avatar once bound to Xenos, now free at last to return home. Patch 6.2 Buried Memory. As the artificial automos is constructed and the warding scales are reinforced, the Warrior of Light reunites with his companions at the Great Work. There, Nitana presents Varshan with a new vessel, an adult form, capable of wielding Virtua's power in the 13th. Hydaelyn too offers a gift, the crystal of light that once traced Meteon's sorrowful journey across the sea of stars. The party returns to the 13th, emerging within a warped fortress ruled by a void-sent named Beatrice. They pursue her through its shadowy halls until another, far stronger void-sent strikes, devouring Beatrice's ether. He introduces himself as Scarmiglione, the archfiend of Earth, one of the 4 elite generals serving a figure known only as Lord Golbez. The Warrior of Light defeats him, but Scarmiglione's ether lingers in the air. In the dungeon below, the warrior happens upon a familiar presence, Xenos' former void-sent avatar, now speaking with eerie familiarity. The crystal of light pulses, purging her corruption and revealing a pale, robed woman. Though still void-sent, she appears human. When asked her name, she merely calls herself Void-sent. Hydaelyn, inspired, gives her a new name, Zero, not to denote nothing, but rather the beginning of something new. In exchange for ether, Zero tells them of the world before the Flood of Darkness, a land consumed by war known as the Contra Memoria. She was born into it, transformed into a void-sent before birth, and cursed to live unchanged. She leads the group to the throne room, where Scarmiglione re-emerges, regenerated. In the 13th, nothing truly dies, not while darkness reigns. Zero refuses to help, until she is reminded that she never paid for the name she received. Reluctantly, she joins the battle and reveals her unique power to crystallize and seal away void-sent ether, the ancient magic known as Memoria. She uses it to trap Scarmiglione permanently. As the warrior holds the crystal, the echo grants them a glimpse of Scarmiglione's past. He was one of 4 creatures elevated by Golbez, empowered with stolen ether drawn from Asdaya. They retreat to Zero's sanctuary, a domain for weak, void-sent seeking refuge from Golbez's purge. His archfiends scour the realm, absorbing or destroying all in their path. Zero explains that consumed void-sent become a part of the Devourer's being, but when such beings are slain, their victims can reform. Elsewhere, Golbez learns of Scarmiglione's defeat. Barbarisha, the archfiend of wind, offers to hunt down the outsider in exchange for more of Asdajar's ether. Golbez consents. Barbarisha's flying domain then appears outside Zero's refuge as she descends, feeding on the weak. Sensing Virtua's essence within Varshan, she remarks that keeping Asdajar alive was wise, the perfect lure. Varshan demands to know his sister's location, and Barbarisha promises answers if they manage to defeat her in her own domain. Determined, Varshan offers his ether to Zero in exchange for her help, and she accepts his payment. The party soars to the floating ruin. Zero seals Void Scent along the way, while the others hold the line, allowing the Warrior of Light to confront the Archfiend. Zero urges them to seal Barbarisha quickly and ask questions later. Heeding her advice, Barbarisha is defeated and sealed, but the Echo remains silent. Worse, Zero collapses, nearly drained of all her ether. They then return to the source to let her recover. Zero is given a room in Razat-Han, and Hydaelyn explains she will regain strength simply by breathing in the ether-rich air, though food might speed the process. When Zero awakens, she tries having a meal. It is strange, yet pleasurable. She admits to have never tasted food in the 13th. To do so meant devouring another, merging with them, something she always refused to do. As her strength returns, Varshan invites her and the warrior on a tour of the city. There they encounter children playing, who explain what a friend truly means. Zero is struck by the simplicity of the concept, as it is very different from what she had learned from her time with Xenos. Later, Zero shares more information about Contra Memoria. In ages past, the Asians had introduced Eidolons, dark reflections of primals. In time, heroes arose to stop them, wielding the Memoria, but that power corrupted many, turning them into monsters themselves. War spread, and while Zero and her mother resisted, they couldn't stop the inevitable. The flood of darkness came, and Zero only survived by falling into the rift. Hydaelyn believes the 13th might be restored, like the first, but Zero is seemingly uninterested in the prospect. As things stand, she has only one purpose: to find Azdaia. Meanwhile, Golbez gathers his remaining generals. The Archfiend of Fire proposes a coordinated strike with his watery counterpart. Golbez approves. Alone, he reflects on his past, how he slew the Watcher on the moon to free his world from stagnation. Even if all fails, the gate is open. Nothing will stop him now. Patch 6.3. God's Revel lands Tremble. Since arriving in the source, Zero has spent her days watching the people of this world, marveling at their ease and laughter. So unlike the brutal survivalism of the Void, she walks beside the Warrior of Light, admitting her surprise that not everyone here is like Xenos. For that, she is quietly relieved. As they prepare another expedition into the 13th, Vertra's roar echoes through the skies above Razat-Han. He felt a flicker of Azdaia's essence, a presence, however faint, calling from the frozen north. The party sets course for Garlemald. Upon arrival, they reunite with Alphinaud and Eorzea. Garlemald still lacks leadership, its people scraping by under Ulysses' guidance, supported by the Ilsabad contingent. Reports speak of increasing Void Scent attacks from the mountains, near the ruins of a Reaper enclave. But the path up the peaks is treacherous, and every Magitech snowcraft is out of commission. The warrior, Eorzea, and Zero head to Tapper's Den in search of an engineer. Along the way, Zero asks Eorzea why she helps the Gallians with no promise of reward. Eorzea chuckles and says that it is simply because she wants to, and that sometimes doing good is its own reward. With the mechanics secured, repairs begin while Estinian, Hydaelyn, and Varshan repel Void Scent. The Warrior of Light joins Eorzea to protect nearby villages, where she expresses hope that Garlemald can once again stand on its own. Zero aids Alphinaud with food distribution. There's a strange familiarity in the act. Ulysses approaches, offering her a fiery dumpling from the Azim steppe. They talk of friends and meaning, and Zero's uncertain understanding of either. Their conversation is cut short by reports of a massive Void Scent incursion from the mountains. Ulysses prepares to respond, but Zero stops him. "Let me go," she says, torn between instinct and something deeper. In the howling winds, Zero stands alone against the Void Scent and loses. As she lies in the snow, memories rise. A younger self, defeated by corrupt Memoriads. They had mocked her solitude, cursed her for having no one. But now in the present, voices call her back. The twins and the Warrior of Light arrive, saving her from the edge. At Tertium, Ulysses offers heartfelt thanks. As Zero collapses from ether depletion, Eorzea teases that the warrior is rubbing off on her. Once Zero recovers, the repaired snowcraft carries the party to the heart of the storm. There they confront Cagnazzo, the archfiend of water, who reveals that he used Adagia's eye to lure them there. Only Golbez knows where she truly is. With a thunderous battle, the archfiend falls. As his essence fades, however, he smiles, knowing he has played his part. Back in Razat-Han, just as preparations resume for the next journey to the 13th, a distant explosion shatters the calm. Y'shtola and Estinian rush toward it. Marchand tends to his people. The warrior and Zero pursue a fleeing monster spotted in the blast's wake. A message crackles through the link pearl. The vault and the void gate are gone. Cagnazzo's final act, it seems, was a diversion. Following the trail, the warrior finds the culprit, Rubicante, the archfiend of fire, admiring the world he had long forgotten. He speaks of noble causes, of Golbez's dream for his ruined star, and the warrior's quest to save Azdaia. He proposes a duel on the top of Mount Ordeals, a clash of ideals. At the summit, they battle and the warrior prevails. Rubicante, weakened but proud, shares Golbez's plan to conquer the source, so the 13th might rejoin the cycle of life and death. But Zero, emboldened, challenges this. Having witnessed life in the source, she's learned that not all things must be exchanged. Sacrificing one world to save another isn't balance, it's cruelty. Rubicante, thoughtful even in defeat, acknowledges her growth. Perhaps we are monsters, he says, but even monsters can have honor. As a final gift, he reveals Golbez's location, the moon of the 13th, a prison once akin to Zodiark's. With her foe's ambitions laid bare, Y'shtola vows to find a way to the moon. Zero too is committed. Something stirs within her, a fire she doesn't yet understand, one that drives her to risk everything. On the moon, Golbez watches from his shadowed throne, resolute, Azdaia caged above his head. His archfiends may have fallen, but the gate is open. His crusade is far from over. Patch 6.4 The Dark Throne. Y'shtola and Urianger return to Razat-Han, bearing the blueprint of a bold new plan, to forge a void gate vast enough for Vertra's true worm form to pass through, linking the moon of the source to the twisted skies of the 13th. The key lies in reactivating the Tower of Babel to channel immense stores of ether, which must be harvested from the Isle of Ham, once intended to fuel the Ragnarok, before Hydaelyn gifted the Mother Crystal instead. But with the Scions no longer active, someone else must petition the forum. Kryl, now aligned with the students of Baldesian, offers her help just as she's finishing a conversation with Arenville, who cryptically hints at a journey of his own. Meanwhile, the Warrior of Light and their allies descend into Labyrinthos to secure cooperation from the original Ragnarok engineers and ensure safe ether containment. With forum approval and the vessels secured, the group prepares to journey to the ether front. Thancred joins the mission and finds himself drawn into conversation with Zero, who still wrestles with the idea of giving aid without compensation. Thancred, as always, offers simple wisdom. His motivation is faith in those he trusts. Zero admits that such trust has no place in the void, not since the age of the Contra Memoria. But Thancred tells her that sticking close to the Warrior of Light is the best way to learn. Before departing, Thancred pulls Urianger aside. They received a curious summons, a request to employ Archons such as themselves in a far-off land. In Garlemald, the path to reactivating the Tower of Babel is fraught with difficulties. The Garleans are wary of foreigners meddling with what was once the seat of their power, and equally fearful of anything to do with magic. The fledgling leadership balks at their proposal. Zero observes that the root issue is imbalance. The Garleans are dependent, while the Ilsabad contingent remains independent. The lack of mutual need sows resentment. Inspired by this observation, Varjan proposes a solution: rekindle trade between Razat-Han and Garlemald. Thavnir would provide resources, Garlemald would supply magitech, and both would profit from the flow of ceruleum. Mutual benefit could rebuild Garlemald and stabilize Thavnir's struggling economy. Two interim lords hear the proposal. One sees its promise, while the other brands it treason and storms out. Eulus, along with the warrior and Zero, follows suit. When a rogue machina threatens the Lord's life, Eulus leaps into action and saves him. He pleads for understanding. Garlemald cannot cling to the past. Change is the only path forward. The Lord relents, persuaded by the strength of his conviction. Zero, curious, asks how Eulus earned his trust. He answers plainly. Trust begins when someone places theirs in you. The words stir old memories. She recalls two figures from her past. A knight and a mage who offered kindness with no demand when they asked her to join them. She had turned them away, too suspicious to believe in their altruism. Now she regrets it. Eulus offers her a simple truth. As long as she lives, she has the power to change. Zero grips his hand, a gesture of trust she is now beginning to understand. With diplomacy on their side, the Tower of Babel is reactivated. On the moon, Hydaelyn lays out the final steps. Using the ancient brands surrounding Zodiark's former prison, they anchor a void gate sealed against intrusion. Loporrit constructs stand ready to purge anything that slips through. When all is ready, Alphino and Alizé power the tower from Garlemald. The ether surges, the gate opens, and Vertra soars from Etheirys to the moon, carrying his companions upon his back into the void. They emerge on the other side in the lifeless scarlet hell of the void's moon, a twisted mirror of the source, with a great chasm echoing Zodiark's cradle. In its depths lies Asdaya, bound in a prison forged of Golbez's will. Her eye, returned to her, sparks her awakening. She warns that the prison holds back her corruption. If Golbez is defeated, she may yet be freed, but the price may be her soul. She reveals Golbez frequents a particular site on the surface. There, the warrior discovers a Memoria crystal and sees through the echo a vision. A knight and a mage battling corrupted Memoriads. They encounter a lone girl at the edge of a village. They offer her friendship and a place beside them, but she refuses. Zero recognizes the tale. It is her own past, and the knight was one of those two who once showed her kindness. Golbez arrives, his army of Voidsent in tow. He mocks them, revealing that Asdaya was but bait. Her longing to return home made her the perfect catalyst. With a gesture, he shatters her cage. Darkness floods her soul, and she transforms into the Shadow Dragon. The battle erupts, and Golbez summons a twisted arena of stone and shadow to house the final duel. The Warrior of Light faces both Golbez and the corrupted dragon. When the dust settles and the warrior emerges victorious, Golbez reveals it was all a ruse. While they fought, remnants of Zodiark's broken essence merged within the chasm. Now awakened, they have become something new, a being of pure despair. Golbez offers it to Asdaya, who has consumed body and soul. He names his creation Zeramas, a god created to bring salvation to his world. Zero attempts to seal Zeramas using the Memoria, but he is vastly too powerful. Her spell fails, and the Memoria crystal is flung into the chasm. The heroes retreat atop Vertra's back. Asdaya is gone, but not lost. Her essence lives on within Zeramas. If they can defeat it, she may yet be saved. Hydaelyn proposes a desperate ploy. They must find a light powerful enough to pierce the deepest darkness. She turns her thoughts to the first, and departs for Old Sharlayan, seeking the knowledge necessary to bring such light into the void. Patch 6.5 Growing Light. Hydaelyn returns to Ratzatan with grim tidings and a glimmer of hope. Zeramas, rather than biding his time, is actively trying to tear through the Void Gate, his strength swelling with every moment. Urianger and the Loporrits struggle to reinforce the magical brands keeping the rift sealed. Yet, Hydaelyn bears good news. In the tomes of the Allegan Archmaker's Noah, she discovered designs for etheric transmitters. Sid and the Ironworks have already fabricated a set. Her plan? To harness the crystallized flood of light in Nabath Arang, send its energy to the crystal tower on the first, and use the rift to pierce through Zeramas' shroud with a concentrated lance of light. Before the Warrior of Light can depart with the devices, Zero steps forward. She wishes to accompany them to the first. explaining that void sense summoning and spirit vessel travel are not so different. As such, she should be able to journey just as the Scions once did. Warrior agrees, and Zero transfers her essence into a vessel. With her vessel in hand, the warrior visits Bakulug for reconstitution. While Bakulug handles the process, the warrior meets with Ryan, who has taken to studying hardy flora, capable of thriving in the newly restored Empty. When Zero awakens, the trio tours the Crystarium, ending their walk at the Crystal Tower. There, Lena voices concern that directing so much light ether through Norvrant might cause alarm, especially in light of past disasters. Understanding the risk, the warrior and Zero travel across the First to reassure its people before deploying the transmitters. As light begins to surge across the land, Zero contemplates its overwhelming radiance. Could a creature of the void truly wield it? Determined to try, she draws it into herself and promptly collapses. Ryan rushes to her side, demanding to know why she would take such a risk. Zero, slowly regaining consciousness, reveals that she wanted to show her world a path to balance, to prove that light and dark could coexist. Touched, Ryan offers to help her try again. Together they stabilize the ether, and this time Zero endures, her resolve to save the 13th strengthening. With half the plan complete, the warrior and Zero return to the source and venture once more through the moon's void gate. On the 13th, they deploy the second set of transmitters to penetrate the shadow cloaking Zeramus. Before descending into the crater, Zero pauses to admire the beams of light streaking across her world, and vows to see it saved, without it being at the cost of another world. Within the depths of the lunar subterrane, the party battles wave after wave of void scent. Amid the chaos, they recover the Memoria crystal Zero had dropped. It drags them into a memory. Golbez and Durante battling corrupted Memoriads in the city of Baron. In the final clash, Golbez is transformed by dark magic. Durante, unable to kill his friend, seals him in the Memoria and takes on his name and armor, swearing to continue their mission alone. The memory fades, and the true Golbez, once Durante, stands before them. Zero begs him to reconsider his path, but he refuses. Power, he insists, is the only way to reshape the world. He recounts how an Asian manipulated his desperation, leading him to slay the Watcher and trigger the flood of darkness. Since that day, he has trusted only in himself and Zeramus, believing salvation demands sacrifice. They clash, and Golbez summons the shades of the fallen archfiends. The group battles through, and the Warrior of Light presses onward into the heart of the crater to face Zeramus alone. Golbez claims nothing can halt Zeramus' ascent, but the others believe in their champion. In the pitch-black abyss, the Warrior of Light confronts Zeramus. The Void God lashes out with reality-bending might, but the warrior holds fast. One by one, allies descend to aid them. Golbez, stirred by memory and a gesture of trust from Zero, a shard of light she shared in a previous vision, joins them. He shields the group and reveals the key. Zeramus must be sealed within a Memoria. As they battle, Zero is nearly cast into the rift, but the bonds she forged pull her back. Empowered by the faith of her companions, she sheds her Reaper guise and embraces the light of her former self, a paladin reborn. Together with Golbez, they combine light and shadow, breaking through Zeramus' shell. Vertra calls out to Asdaya, and with Zero sealing Zeramus' essence, Varshan unites their ether to restore her form. Golbez, humbled, admits he now sees hope for the 13th, but doubts his place in that future. Zero offers him forgiveness and a path forward. Together they will find others who share their dream. On the moon's surface, Zero bids farewell to her newfound friends. She entrusts Ryan with Zeramus' Memoria, hoping it aids her quest in the Empty. In return, the warrior gives her the Archfiend's crystals to inspire Golbez. As a parting gift, Hydaelyn presents Zero with a Nixie, imbued with her warding scale, should they ever need to reconnect. Celebrations follow. In Razatan, the Loperites discuss new projects that might aid the Void. In Garlemald, Zero's gratitude is passed on to Eulus, who in turn urges the twins to take a well-earned break. Back in Old Shalayan, Y'shtola presents her findings to the forum, and the warrior escorts the Levelure siblings home. At last, in Razathan, old friends reunite under the starlit sky. Two great worms roar joyfully above, a sign that even across the sundered reflections, hope now travels freely. And in Old Shalayan, Kryl unearths a long-lost letter buried in old files. Inside is an earring and a petition to her grandfather, asking him to explore a fabled city in distant Tural. Meanwhile at the docks, Eorzea returns from his homeland, with a stranger in tow, in search of a champion. The warrior of light is summoned once more to the Baldesian Annex. There he reunites with Kryl, now wearing the mysterious earring she found, and Grahatea, who brings word from Eorzea. The seasoned gleaner has just returned from distant shores, bringing with him a guest of no small significance, Wuk Lamat, a spirited contender in the right of succession for Tuliolal, the capital of the New World, Tural. Wuk Lamat wastes no time. She extends a bold invitation to the Warrior of Light, asking them to accompany her as her champion in the coming trial that will determine the future ruler of her homeland. She hints that the right will be no simple contest, but one wrapped in myth, rumors of the Golden City, and the legendary beast Valegarmanda abound. Still, before forging such a partnership, she insists on a proper introduction. A hunt, she says, will tell her all she needs to know. Eorzea suggests a recent bounty on unruly beasts, prowling the Isle of Ham. And though he sighs at Wuk Lamat's gleeful curiosity about their culinary potential, he agrees to lead them to the docks. As they traverse the isle, Wuk Lamat marvels at Shalayan's wonders, stories once told to her by her brother Koana, a former student of the studium. The group eventually encounters a massive colibri, capable of mimicking speech. After felling the beast, Wuk Lamat's shaken confidence becomes clear, though she masks her nerves. The colibri rises again, nearly overwhelming her, until Kryl arrives in a burst of brilliant color, finishing it off with pictomancy, an esoteric art passed down from the War of the Magi. Kryl explains she's been studying the forgotten art, once wielded by Archon Realm, spurred by her own feelings of helplessness during past crises. She wishes to join their journey to Tural, not just to support Wuk Lamat, but because of a letter she had found. Wuk Lamat examines it and confirms the signature belonging to her father, the Dawn Servant. But the letter is a forgery. The language is wrong, the script unfamiliar, and the wax seal is not a tradition used in her homeland. However, the enigma only deepens Kryl's resolve. Back in Shalayan, the group prepares a fiery feast from the colibri, using spices popularized by Zero during her stay. Over dinner, Wuk Lamat opens up about the stakes in Tural. One of her rival siblings plans to exploit Garlemald's weakness to ignite a campaign of conquest, and she's determined to stop him. Graha questions whether inviting outsiders into such a pivotal national matter is wise. Wuk Lamat counters that Tural thrives on diversity, and its ruler should reflect that spirit. The next day, the twins overhear talk of the impending voyage. Eorzea and Alphino leap at the chance to help and rush off to prepare. Graha, meanwhile, confides in the Warrior of Light his suspicions that more is at play in the succession than Wuk Lamat lets on. In the shadows nearby, Thancred quietly listens. With the party growing, the Warrior of Light formally accepts Wuk Lamat's invitation. Graha remains behind to oversee the students of Baldesian, while Wuk Lamat insists Eorzea accompany them, playfully invoking his long-forgotten dream of seeing the fabled city of gold. Across the sea in Limsa-Lominsa, Estinian muses aloud about his next destination. He's already ventured north and east. Perhaps it's time to head west. He buys a ticket for a ship bound for the New World. Elsewhere in Old Shalayan, Thancred meets with Urianger. The pair exchange knowing glances. It seems their allies aren't the only ones heading to Tural. They too will journey there, but to back a different claimant. Urianger asks if Thancred has any qualms about opposing their friends, but the gunbreaker simply smiles. He's never been one to shy from a challenge. That night, the Warrior of Light stands at the edge of the Old Shalayan docks, staring out toward the horizon. In the wind, echoes of Emmet Selk's words return, as Azim's heirs seen what lies beneath the waves of the bounty. tread the treasure isles beyond the blind frost, set foot in the golden city. A grin tugs at his lips. A new dawn rises, and with it emerges a new trail to follow. And so ends the complete story of Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. It sure was a long one. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and maybe even share the video with some friends, so they can share in the madness. Madness, I tell you! But until next time, caca!